I might allow myself to be a guinea pig in the name of humanity for one of these early vaccines, but I'm not pushing it as a recommendation until we've had time to review the data. Hello and welcome to this version of Ask the Doctor. This is a subsidiary of the Wise Medical Minute where I respond specifically to questions that you have posed. Now, today I want to correct and or change a position I took in previous recordings, and that's based on an experience last weekend. I had the privilege of serving on a panel of people giving a talk on men's wellness. And one of the doctors that was on the panel happened to be a doctor working at the CDC. So I was stunned when one of the participants asked this doctor about whether or not we should be taking vaccines for COVID-19. And as some of you know, I've advocated strongly that when a vaccine becomes available, we should be taking it. Now, I want to soften that position a little bit today. The doctor at the CDC said none of her family and no people within her sphere of influence will be taking any vaccines that come out in the next few months or a year. So I was stunned by that, and I asked the obvious question, what will it take to change your mind to make it safe to take a vaccine? And I'm purposely leaving her anonymous because I don't want her to lose her job at the CDC. But basically, her response was, follow the money. And that makes perfect sense. If we think about all of the things that don't make sense that we've seen in the last, especially 9 or 10 months, but really the last 2 or 3 years coming out of our federal government, our ability to have faith in stuff that comes out of the federal government is greatly diminished. A lot needs to be done to restore our confidence in our government. So the point is, 3 people, 3 companies, 3 big companies, I don't mind calling their names, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Pfizer. If their vaccines are the first one to market, I won't be taking it either. Okay, and the reason is simple. Follow the money. They've invested millions of dollars in producing these vaccines so they'll be ready for distribution, and they haven't even been tested yet adequately for satisfaction of people with more expertise than me. So if the CDC doctor is not going to take it, I don't want it either. But the logic behind it is real simple. They invest these multiple millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in production. They're not going to just let that stuff sit on a shelf. They're going to distribute and tell you whatever, that won't even call his name, is telling them to tell you. But basically, if it's motivated by politics and not science, and these first few vaccines will be motivated by politics and not science, it might need to be subject to more scrutiny before we go advocating people get these vaccines. So I'm reversing my position on the vaccine until such time that I have a chance to review the data and review the opinions of people with more expertise than myself, and then I'll get back to you about specific recommendations for the vaccine. Now the good news is, in addition to these 3 politically connected folks getting all this government money, there's at least 43 other people out there, companies, doing research on vaccines, mostly coming out of Europe, Asia, Hong Kong, and I think at least one out of Russia has already been approved by their authorities. They were doing research using their military, which is another ethical question. But the bottom line is we need data, we need safety information, we need efficacy information before we go pushing these vaccines. And when people have been given all this money, their motivation is no longer the science behind it. So these little guys, these other 43 companies, I have no idea who's gonna emerge as coming up with something scientifically and medically sound, but they will be swimming upstream because the big boys with all the money are going to make it politically difficult. And they've already got the CDC and the NIH hamstrung. So anyone else who survives after these big three, they're going to have hard data, scientific data. And the powers that be will have no choice but to approve their vaccine when they present that data. So that's the one I'm definitely going to take. I might allow myself to be a guinea pig in the name of humanity for one of these early vaccines, but I'm not pushing it as a recommendation until we've had time to review the data. So stay tuned, and I am not running for any political office, so it's okay for me to change my opinion on these kinds of subjects. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, remember info@wisemedicalcenter.com, and I'll give you some feedback in future recordings.
Thank you for listening to the Wise Medical Minute with Dr. Thomas Locke. Dr. Locke addresses current events as well as important medical issues using responsible, unbiased journalism approached from a medical perspective. We invite you to submit questions or comments or suggestions for future topics by email to info@wisemedicalcenter.com. Again, thank you for viewing the Wise Medical Minute.